Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. We're so happy that you are here with us today. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene. It's nice to be back. I had to take a couple of weeks off because my mouth hurt.
Yes.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I explained that in the podcast that you were not there, why you weren't there. So Patrick had some surgery on his mouth.
I had excess bone removed from my jaw. So, and the recovery was pretty rough. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
We don't have to go into too much explanation.
No.
It's called Tori if you want to be brave.
T-O-R-I.
If you want to be brave and Google it.
Yeah. Bottom line is they took it out and it took a little while to heal. So not 100% there.
A lot of pudding, a lot of ice cream.
Yeah. A lot of weight loss.
Yeah.
So that's good. That's good.
All right. So I recorded 2 episodes without you. One of them was about...
Best episodes ever.
No. Our listeners would disagree. Well, I hope they enjoyed those episodes, but I do get really good feedback that they love the episodes that are both of us or that you do solos. People love you, Patrick, and they appreciate your perspective.
I love people.
As do I. Moving on. So one of the episodes that we recorded was about divorce and children. And I had my friend on and she was talking about her perspective as an adult child who had parents that did divorce, that stayed together up until a certain point, because that's, they had decided, hey, we're going to, that's just the decision that they made.
Sure.
So being a parent who did go through a divorce process, I was thinking you have experienced, I know that you went through a lot. I'm sure you had a lot of the same thoughts and fears and worries that a lot of my clients do when they're thinking about stepping into the unknown, raising a child by yourself, because we don't have to go into all the details, but you were more or less a single parent for all intents and purposes after the divorce and, everything that came with that. And so I don't know if you had any other perspective or comments that maybe you wanted, since you weren't in that episode, if you wanted to share around just that process.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I come from a home where there was no divorce, right? So you bring that preconceived notion of like, hey, no matter what, stick it through. And I remember, in my first marriage, there was an automobile accident that caused disability, and that happened when Keegan was very, very young. So I took over as the primary caregiver when he was still 1. And I mean, I guess you could argue the only caregiver. I certainly had help. I'm not going to say I did it all by myself, but certainly had help. But I remember thinking through all of that because our relationship was totally changed, altered, in an irreversible way, right? And so I remember I used to think like it's really important. I actually remember having this deliberate thought because I did think through it quite a bit. Like, it's so important that Keegan has both of his parents in the house and stuff like that. But it was just really, really hard.
What was hard?
The relationship. It was just, and it wasn't because there was fighting or anything like that. It was just, she had come out of that particular situation a completely different person because of traumatic brain injury, and I wasn't the healthiest person in the world either. You know what I mean? So you kind of go through that. So you take that stress and you overlay it over Keegan's life when he was very, very young. And so by the time we did get to divorce, then it was, he actually, it is my belief that the time he spent with me, and then the time he spent with her, was much more, I guess you could argue, focused on him, right? Than it would be, split and stuff like that. So I think he got more of the attention that he needed. And then
you're saying the divorce itself helped you parent him better.
That's right. Yeah. Cause then it was, like everything was there was always, because of the nature of what had happened in our relationship, something always had to take a back seat at various times, and stuff like that. So
I'm just going to clarify something. And if you want me to delete this, we can delete this. But just to be clear, your partner asked for the divorce and also was unfaithful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and you said, are you sure? So you were not like jumping at divorce?
No. I actually had kind of felt like, and you could argue this.
Because I just always like to clarify that when we share this story, just because when you start describing the accident, it can be really easy for someone not hearing the full story to go, oh my gosh, you like had an injured spouse and how did you end up divorced without getting,
right.
And what did that look like? So I mean, we don't have to share all the details, but just to kind of clarify a little bit how that happened.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so she requested a divorce. We didn't do therapy or counseling.
You asked for it though, right?
I did. I said, hey, don't you think we should try this? And the answer was no. And so there was a lot of wounding. A lot of what I had to process post discovery was a lot of this. The stuff.
Yeah, you didn't realize how much it had hurt you until we were going through recovery, and then all of a sudden you thought, oh, I didn't really fully heal from this.
No, I never did. But, Keegan was able to, and what you would see with him, and I worked very hard to do that. And I guess in a sense, I would give her credit on that, as she worked very hard to make it fun, for him. So he had this much more lighter experience of going, it was tough to go back and forth. And then at some point they lived out of state. So the visitation was even more involved and a little bit more logistically challenging, but we made it work. And I think Keegan had, it's always up to the parents how much of a relationship they want to have with those children. It's really the parents' responsibility to lean into that. But in my experience, I think, with me being able to meet you and your family and you and them being there for him in a much different way than he would have experienced, so he got the best of that. And
had you stayed together?
Right. And he had to go through his own stuff, like we all do, right? Our kids have to go through things, and they have to heal from things. And I'm sure, the automobile accident and the divorce, was a wound for him, as well. But I think, his ability to have more of a structured life and have, attentive parents increased dramatically post divorce. And so that's always good for a child. And so there's always things that can be a little complicated, like visitation and money and those kinds of things. So I think if you were to ask him, I think he would. We got divorced when he was so young that I don't think he would really view it any other way. You know what I mean? And so, everybody's situation is different, and you have to think that through. But it's, I think it's always like, I think Carly was like, people say, oh, kids are resilient, and I think she said that in the podcast, which was really good.
No, she said kids are not resilient, but they do.
People will say that. Yeah.
But they are adaptable. And so, and then we were talking about what we want to do is create, how can we be the healthiest so that we can help them? Because you mentioned something about, Keegan's gone through hard things, and he has, because we all do. And that's one of the things that as parents, we sort of have to come to this acceptance that there's no choices in life that we can make that will completely protect our kids from hard things happening. And actually, I would argue there's a level to which we shouldn't totally try to protect them from hard things happening, because what we want to do is teach them resilience.
Right.
If we put them in a bubble, eventually they'll have to go out into the real world, and they're not going to be.
The real world is scary and hard.
There's no version of adulthood that is just Barbie land.
Well, like Keegan right now, he's going through a military like field problem, and he's it's his 5th day.
It's like intense military training,
and they're moving at night, and there's nothing I could do to help him with that. You know what I mean? Other than get through it.
That's like a really good example though, because what we did when we got together is really tried our best to create a stabilized environment for him with as much consistency as we possibly could, which even led into had some influence on like why we didn't move when you had an opportunity to move for a job. And so we planted, my family was nearby. We just tried to create stability, right? But within that, a lot of hard things come. So like there's this balance of how do you, help them have healthy life you want them to have. But also he was bullied at school. Also, he had his biological mom in another state. Also, he had some
some health issues.
He had some health issues.
Right.
Like there was a lot so we can't protect our kids from hard things in life, but we can say, hey, we're going to be here for you through them. And I'm going to do my best to be a healthy adult to demonstrate how to move through hard things and to help you be resilient. And I think ultimately that ends up being, and so when you think about saying what you just said, like, where is he right now? Like, that's like I don't know, like, would he be able to mentally, if he wasn't a little bullied in school, would he be the same person that he is right now? If he didn't go through some hard things, would he have ultimately chosen something other than the military? I don't know. You can't really answer that, but he's very happy where he is right now. And like with all of us, everything that's happened in our lives helps shape who we become.
And also too, like, one of the things that I was very much flying solo, raising him, by myself. And this is, the accident was not my ex-wife's fault. You know what I mean? And so she couldn't control what her physical limitations were. But I had to make decisions all by myself. And I made pretty good decisions, but we always make better decisions when we've got more input, right? And so that's what you were able to bring to the table for him too, is we were able to kind of walk through some things with his health, with his education, with different things. And like I said, it wasn't that I just abdicated every decision with him, but it was an input piece. Yeah. And so, I think sometimes when you're in a situation where the marriage is really, really struggling, and let's say you can't communicate with each other, it takes in order to raise kids effectively, it's just hard to begin with, right? Because of all the societal pressure. But having the parents at their best emotionally to solve major issues with their children, sometimes that comes from divorce, because then you can just speak to each other a little bit, and the relational stress is gone. Right. So now it's about your kids. And so, anyway, so that's just, I think, not to lean one way or the other, but, it's
taking the fear away from it.
That's right.
I think when we get stuck in fear, we forget that there are, we're always afraid of the unknown, but we forget that within the unknown is also a million opportunities that are good.
Right.
The unknown doesn't just hold scariness and badness. And so I think that's the only reason that we kind of wanted to talk about this, is because you've been through it and Keegan's been through it. And if he wasn't so private, maybe we could get him on the podcast. He's super private about like social media and like all this kind of stuff.
Maybe someday
in a decade. But but I just think like it's important to highlight that when we make decisions that we're afraid of or that we have a lot of fear around, they don't always end up with bad outcomes. And it's like why we kind of go on the podcast, right? If everybody thought that confessing their addiction ended, like you thought that your marriage would end. And so when we were going through it, we were looking for stories of hope. We need stories of hope. So what we're trying to do is just share the reality that there are other alternatives other than the most scary one in our mind. Right. And so anytime we can share examples of that, it helps our brain know, hey, there's other possibilities out there. And I think too, you're a great example, because a lot of people going through this decision are thinking about a lot of things. There's fear of the unknown. There's financial, and you at the time were essentially broke. Yeah. By the time you got divorced, you more or less had like no money. Yeah. And so that was probably really scary for you. You did have a job.
Right.
So there was a little bit of security knowing that you were going to get paid, but you essentially, after the medical bills and the divorce bills and the alimony and everything that you kind of went through, essentially after all of that, you were starting over.
Yeah.
So the one thing you had was a job, but you really didn't have anything to bank on other than that.
No. And we Keegan and I made it work. And it's what's so interesting is he and I have talked about that. And he's like, I didn't know that we didn't have any money.
Right.
And so it's because we did, we went outside and rode bikes, and then we went hiking, and you
told me a story about when you moved into the house here. Yeah. Before we got together, you guys were eating like this fast food burger on the floor with no furniture.
That's right. Yeah.
And he probably thinks that's like a fun memory.
Yeah. Actually, the picture came up in my Facebook feed, and I sent it to him. He was like, "Dad, you look different." I'm like, "Well, it was 15 years ago, you know." So I'm like, "You do too."
Your hair was redder. He was shorter.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it's. I guess the thing is, you know, the recommendation I would have for everyone through this process, because you've got to tailor it to your own situation, is try not to think in absolutes. And so like, oh my gosh, if we divorce, is it going to hurt the kids? Well, maybe not necessarily. Maybe divorce will be healthy for the kids.
Hold on, because that's never an option. I think in some, like when we're thinking about it, you just said divorce can be healthy for kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a
Yeah.
repeat statement, because I think that's something that's not commonly stated.
Right. So it's about what your situation demands and yields. And so I think, you know, you're right. I had no money. And I think it was what I used to pick up with something Stouffer's. It was like a family
meal,
family size lasagna, and I would make it on Sunday night, and that was dinner for like 7 nights or whatever. But you know, I like lasagna, and so did Keegan. So we were like, "Yay!" You know what I mean? But it was just what we had to do. You know what I mean? It was $8 or whatever, and it was just. It's just what it was. And so it was, you know, it was fun. I mean, you sometimes you look back on those times and you go, you know, we made it and we didn't die. You know what I mean? It's one of those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I think the two of you, what's the word I'm looking for? You curated, maybe that's not the right word, but you created like this really deep connection through that process.
Yeah. He and I are very close, very, very close. And so it's I always worried because I don't know if we, you know, you can never predict out what would have been, but, you know, because it's really hard to do that. But I mean, our connections were so solid, you know, it was about him. And so, you know, and I think it's, you know, the degree of influence is always governed by the depth of the relationship. And so he and I have just always been able to be really close, and we spend time together well. And then
I came in and blew everything up.
Hey, Dad, what's she doing here? That's my favorite line.
Oh, that hurt my feelings so bad.
Yeah. But it makes sense, because if you
totally.
You know, we talked about that, because like to him, I was his world up until 7 or 8 years old. So, and you know, we always say this, like, I wish I had been able to sit him down, been more healthy, right, and sit him down and be like, hey, this doesn't change anything between me and you. You know what I mean? Because I think
I had a conversation about that, although it wasn't in relation to his relationship with you. I had a conversation with him when we got together that said, hey, I'm not coming in to replace your bio mom. Like, that's not my intention.
Yeah.
And, but I said, I think this is maybe after we got...
You're like, you're grounded.
I think this was after we got engaged. And I said... I am going to view you as my child.
Yeah.
And so you can call me Kylene or you can call me mom, but I just need you to know that I'm going to view you as if you're mine, and I'm going to treat you that way. And so we had that conversation but also saying like, hey, I'm not trying to like replace anybody. Those might've been separate or in the same conversation or whatever, but it wasn't actually in relationship to how his relationship with you or anything like that. But but then he decided to call me mom, and I don't think there's been a single time, thank goodness, that I can think of off the top of my head in the whole time that we've been together, and he's 21 now, that was always my concern. I was like, I'm going to make him mad one day and he's going to scream, "You're not my mom."
Yeah.
But he never did.
I mean, you made him mad.
Oh, I made him mad.
Yeah.
He did scream, "I hate you" once. And that was when I was really relieved that he didn't scream, "You're not my mom." Yeah. I'm like, you can hate me.
Yeah.
But at least we're still...
But I mean, you know, bio parents get that too.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, I'm like, that's fine. Right. You can be mad at me. That's fine.
Yep. I watched my dad and my brother wrestle across the hood of a car one time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like...
But all that to say, and I think we'll actually wrap this as a short little bonus episode, and we'll start the other one separately, because otherwise this is an insanely long intro to something that's completely unrelated.
Yeah.
So all that to say, there can be positive outcomes when we're making decisions from a place of, you know, what's ultimately going to help me be the healthiest, where I have capacity to have a good relationship and put energy towards my relationship with my kids. Because sometimes, like, when we're in when we are in home environments or relationships that are exhausting, they're mentally and emotionally and physically exhausting, like it does impact our ability to be present in various ways for anyone in our lives. And so I think sometimes that's a hard awareness, because we really are going, but I'm familiar with this and I'm aware of this, and I kind of know how to manage it. And I don't know how to manage the fact that I'm going to have to eat, like to your point, like I'm going to have to buy like a frozen meal and like change my life, change my finances, change my home environment, change all these things. That sounds so scary and unmanageable. But there are so many times where if that leads you to be a more grounded person, a calmer person, a more present person for yourself and for your kids, it could ultimately change the trajectory of your life and your family's life and your kids' life in a really, really positive way.
Right. And you know, when you go into a divorce situation, there has to be some degree of trust. So when you hand off your kids, or they get handed off to you, you have to, there's trust there. But the thing, you're
talking about co-parenting.
Yeah, co-parenting. And the thing you got to think about is if you're in an environment where, maybe you trust them with your kids, but you don't trust them with you, all that's going to show up, right? And so if it's just, and I remember thinking this, like, Keegan's I don't want to be the guy that has all the great experiences with Keegan. I want Keegan to have good experiences, right? So when I would take him to Colorado, I knew how beautiful it was out there. And so I was like, man, they're going to have great experiences. They're going to sit around the table and play board games, and they're probably going to eat food, and they're going to, hike, and that's awesome. You know what I mean? So, I think it allows you, and it also, because I remember I always tell this story, the very first weekend I didn't have him, and it was really hard for me to go drop him off, but I came home and I slept on the couch. I was like, and I had this thing, because I was living in New Jersey, I was going to go into Philadelphia, and I was going to ride my bike and go for a run and then go to this bar, but I didn't do any of it. I went and grabbed some food and fell asleep on the couch. And so, because I was so tired, from everything that had happened. And so it is okay, you know what I mean? It is okay, and and the kids will be okay, and maybe the distinct spouses, ex-spouses can show up more for those children. And that's what children need. Children need attentiveness. Children need parents reaching towards them, no matter what the relational thing is. Now, and then you can have, hopefully through the healing process, you can have open conversations with the children about what happened.
That's the little asterisk I would say, is if you're listening to this podcast, you are already so much further in life and in your education around emotional awareness and how to communicate than we were when any of these experiences happened in our lives. Like when we went through betrayal, and when Patrick went through divorce, and when I went through divorce, and all these kinds of things. And when I went through the parenting journey, when he was really, really young. And so when people have some therapy, or they have some tools in their tool belt, like that just adds so much more. You did all of this without any of that.
Right.
So people listening, I think in a lot of ways may already have more tools even to navigate that situation. And that's really important, because obviously we turn around and go, I wish I had this when we were parenting him, and we could have, handled things better and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But ultimately, I guess to just sort of wrap it up is, like, none of us are going to be perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. And we cannot permanently protect kids from, things that are uncomfortable in their life. But what we can do is learn how to sit in our own discomfort and learn how to manage our own emotions, so that ultimately we can demonstrate that to our children and help them navigate life, because we're all living it. Right. And the more we can help them become resilient human beings, that's going to impact everybody in a beneficial way.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad, that we had a little accidental bonus episode, I guess.
Accidental bonus.
I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on that, because you have that lived experience and thought maybe that might be helpful for people to hear.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today. And actually, we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye-bye.
Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.